Hello and good afternoon. My name is Máté Heisz. I'm Head of International Cooperation at SolarPower Europe. Welcome to this webinar on mobilizing renewable energy investment in the African, Caribbean and Pacific region, brought to you by SolarPower Europe with the support of GET.invest. It is my pleasure to welcome here today Silvia Ainio from DG DEVCO of the European Commission, Franz, the team leader of GET.invest, and Damien Ricordeau, the CEO of Finergreen, a member of SolarPower Europe. So for those participants who are not familiar with SolarPower Europe, just a brief introduction of our association. We are Europe's leading association representing the solar industry. Our main objective is to create business opportunities for solar and to shape the regulatory environment in Europe, but also beyond Europe in favor of solar. We have more than 200 members covering the entire solar value chain, from manufacturers through project developers, service providers, and also in neighboring sectors like storage or digitalization, e-mobility. And it is in the context of trying to create business opportunities and shaping the regulatory environment in favor of solar that we have partnered with GET.invest, an EU-funded program to promote renewable energy investment in the ACP region. And it is also in this framework that we're organizing today's webinar, the objective of which is to learn more about the EU's renewable energy cooperation beyond Europe, and also to deep dive a little bit into the services offered by GET.invest, services that many of our members and the solar industry, European businesses, could benefit from. So the presentations of Silvia Ainio and Franz will be followed by a short reflection by Damien Ricordeau from Finergreen on the industry's point of view, the industry's needs in terms of financing and support and accompaniment in renewable energy development, with a specific focus on the ACP region, obviously. So this much from my side as a short introduction, and so with this, I would like to invite Silvia Ainio, Program Manager at DG DEVCO, and also the Project Manager of GET.invest, to make her presentation on the EU's renewable energy instruments in the ACP region.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to give you an overview of the strategy of the sustainable energy strategy of the EU, which is at the moment organized around the three main action areas. The way in which the EU promotes its sustainable energy strategy is basically through first promoting ownership. This means that it promotes this through budget support, policy dialogues with different ministries and government, but also initiatives. We have, for example, the Africa Renewable Energy Initiative, and also the Africa-EU Energy Partnership, which supports strategic political dialogue between the two continents with the aim of promoting the Africa energy transition. A second very important pillar of the EU Sustainable Energy Strategy is basically expertise. What does this mean? It means that actually we bring technical expertise in our action with the aim of improving legislative frameworks and institutional capacities, with the aim of enhancing technical skills of the workforce. Very often we promote also cross-border interconnection and the research and innovation for the country's transition to a low carbon model. And the third very important pillar of our strategy is the use of financial tools. This is because we are aware that it is crucial to leverage additional investments by providing risk capital, guarantees, etc., and decreasing the risk for the private companies to invest. I apologize about the changes of slides, but I hope that it still is clear. Just to recap, basically, we have promotion of ownership, reforms, and finally, the use of different financial tools. How do we use financial tools? Basically, is by putting money in investment facilities managed by IFIs, and then these investment facilities basically invest in private sector driven projects in developing countries, And we do this with a lot of different types of investments possible. These are equity, quasi-equity, junior loans, and senior loans as well. Finally, we have the tools of guarantees, which are provided to IFIs to basically cover part of the risk to private companies. The flagship instrument of our tools is the European External Investment Plan. The EU External Investment Plan is basically a plan that tackles these three strategies and brings them all together in providing finance, which includes basically blending and guarantees. Blending is meaning that the EU actually often covers part of the cost of a development project, with public and private investors financing the rest to get it off the ground. And then guarantees, meaning that we take a whole new approach where we share the risks. So the private investors and development banks can actually lend to entrepreneurs and finance development projects in the highest risky areas. The second important part of the EFSD is the expertise. So this follows the idea of us wanting to promote technical assistance in these countries, and we found experts to develop bankable projects. Finally, we support the investment climate. What does this mean? It means that we try to improve the business environment by improving the conditions which investors consider when making decisions. This includes the business environment itself, but also other factors, meaning like how stable a country is. And we often work with governments closely and bring them together with businesses to discuss investment challenges and to talk about how to overcome them. One example of the EFSD guarantees that has a very strong impact on sustainable energy is the Sustainable Energy and Connectivity Window. So the EFSD guarantees, which are part of the European External Investment Plan, are organized around different thematic areas, and the Sustainable Energy Window follows the idea that 28% of the value of the guarantees should back climate action. And it is actually by far the largest window, with over 600 million of guarantees which are approved by the operational board, which means almost 40% of the total value of the EFSD guarantees. One concrete example is the Africa Energy Guarantee Facility, which is a guarantee facility which was recently signed with KfW and is designed to increase the availability of political and commercial risk insurance to actors in the Africa power markets. The Commission proposal for the new financial instrument actually calls for a much more ambitious climate objective, where up to 25% of the Union budget expenditures should support climate. So we expect actually in the future our instrument to also increase its support overall to climate objective, and as a consequence also very largely to sustainable energy. We have also a tool that we use besides the European External Investment Plan, which is a technical assistance facility that provides project advice to the different initiatives that we promote. And we very often use it to enhance technical skills of the workforce. To benefit from the technical assistance facility, basically the request should be channeled through the respective European delegations, so it's done at the country level, and later have to be approved by the headquarters, which passes the assignment to the TAF. Another very important program that we promote is GET.invest program. I'm not going to speak that much about it because you'll get a much further overview afterwards by Franz. But at the same time, just to tell you that this is really at the core and at the pillar of our strategy, as it allows us to really prepare a pipeline of project matchmaking initiatives and really support initial stage project developers. I'm going to give you another couple of examples of initiatives that we support besides the European External Investment Plan, but under our sustainable energy strategy. One of them is Electrify. Electrify is an initiative which is managed by ETFMC, which is a subsidiary of the Association of 15 European Development Finance Institutions. It's an impact investment facility, and it's offering flexible products that meet entrepreneurs' needs. Basically, it invests in debt, equity, quasi-equity investments that go from a really wide range of sizes, from $500,000 to $10 million size of investments. And the aim is to really make investments that are additional to the market. We also have specific country windows. Country windows mean that we tailor the decisions and the support of Electrify to customized approach that needs to meet the needs of specific markets. At the moment, we have Electrify active and operating in Benin, in Côte d'Ivoire, in Nigeria, and in Zambia and the Pacific region, and we expect this to expand. Another example is finally Climate Investor One. Climate Investor One is one of our flagship initiatives that we support, and it's comprising of three different funds. The Development Fund, which provides technical assistance in the development stage of a project, the Construction Equity Fund, which provides equity financing in the construction phase of large-scale projects, and finally the Refinancing Fund, providing long-term senior debt during the operational phase. And it basically offers developers up to 50% of development and planning cost, and focuses on large-scale renewable energy projects. This was just an overview, and of course there is much more, but I'll be happy to answer relevant questions at the end of the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Silvia. A very impressive universe of EU instruments to promote renewable energy investment outside of Europe, and also the energy transition. Now, in the next presentation, we will deep dive a little bit into GET.invest and the specific services and activities of GET.invest that could be of big relevance to the participants as well. So I would like to invite Michael Franz, team leader of GET.invest, to join me here and give us his presentation.
Thank you very much, Máté, and hello to everybody who is participating in this webinar. I am Michael Franz. I'm team leader at GET.invest. By way of very brief introduction, this is now year 13 that I'm working on these topics. I was based in Kenya for 5 years at the time when the solar sector was still in a very different and more difficult place, I suppose, than it is today. And now in the intervening years, I've been in, since about 8 years, I've been in Brussels, first setting up and designing, and then now managing what is now GET.invest, which is a European program with the role of supporting you insofar as your companies or projects operating in the space in developing your business or projects in partner countries. We are building on the Africa EU Renewable Energy Cooperation Program. That's what we were called before, but we have now rebranded since about 1 year into GET.invest. In a nutshell, we deliver through two components which are building on each other. One is that we provide information, that we support events, matchmaking, that we work with associations in order to inform and mobilize private sector for investment in these countries. And the second one that is building on this is that we have the ability to directly support project and business development, as well as do capacity development for relevant stakeholders. All this is possible because we're a development cooperation program. We're spending taxpayers' money, but that is channeled to us via the donors. The donors of GET.invest are the European Commission, Germany, Sweden, the Netherlands, and Austria. And we are implemented by GIZ, that's German Development Corporation, GEZ. Now, to go into content, what is this all about? In a nutshell, and that is something that I also brought with me from when I was working in Africa, in Kenya, I realized that there is a gap between people that are good at doing business, good at developing projects, that are looking for funding, and there are many. And on the other hand, there's a lot of different financing opportunities and actors that are willing to finance, but one doesn't necessarily know each other. Language is not necessarily the same. And then the modalities of all these financing instruments, they differ, projects differ. So what we did in the end of the day is design a mechanism that sits in between, makes the link, and helps these two perspectives to match and to marry and get together. I should say that the smaller the company, of course, the more difficult it gets. And also the more domestic, the more national, the more local the company, the more difficult it gets. In the context of this presentation, our support extends to both projects as well as companies. The difference is evidently project financing versus corporate financing, and so on and so forth, and all the implications of that. We can support both. Our objective is that somebody who asks us for support has been accepted by a financier for financing. And I'll explain in the following how that works. Now, but before we get there, I briefly want to mention the different sort of market segments that we are working on. there was a time when I started when one was looking at technologies. There was a lot of discussion of solar versus wind versus biomass and so on and so forth. And I must say, I personally don't find that the most useful distinction. We have therefore structured GET.invest in a different way. We work alongside market segments. The energy markets in developing countries are much more diverse, I should say, or at least that's my feeling, than the ones that we're used to here. Energy comes in various different forms, not just power from a socket in the wall. Yeah, and there is a lot of underlying business models. As GET.invest, we do not see ourselves in the space of large grid-connected power projects. By large, I mean it's hard actually to draw the exact line. It's probably somewhere in the direction of anything beyond 50 or 70 million euros ticket size. Usually these projects, they come with their own capacity, their own TA facilities, and so on and so forth. But then there's small IPPs. So IPP is independent power producers, by the way, so generation and feeding into the grid. There is the commercial and industrial off-takers, yeah? Factories, farms. Yeah? Then in the off-grid space, and I do appreciate that commercial and industrial could also be off-take or off-grid, yeah. But normally they are not. Normally they are in the areas where the main grid is. We have mini grids. Mini grids are isolated networks electrifying villages or regions. We have solar home systems and standalone systems. And I do appreciate here that they can be large and small, that we also have productive use devices in here. So it's a broader category than just this. But then at the I hesitate to say bottom end of the spectrum, we have solar lighting and lanterns. I hesitate because this is also important, because there's a lot of people out there that for whom the most appropriate source of energy services is this. And then let's not forget that many people in the developing countries still cook with traditional forms of biomass use, and all that needs support. We are basically able to support all of this with the geographic scope of largely sub-Saharan Africa, and we're now starting up in the Caribbean, where we're pretty much operational already, and the Pacific is under consideration. Voila. Now, what is it that we do? Slightly more highlight on the different services. As I said, the two components that build on each other: information, matchmaking, working with associations. So it's our great pleasure and privilege to work with SolarPower Europe. I've been working with associations throughout these 12 or 13 years, and I think it's absolutely vital. Any market, any functioning market must have functioning associations. Actually, in an ideal world, we wouldn't be necessary. The type of work that we are doing could and should be done through associations, but this is not yet quite the car industry or something like that. But we're getting there. And then, yeah, as I mentioned, what we call pipeline development, getting projects or businesses ready for financing through coaching and advisory and through doing capacity development of key stakeholders. I will run through the following slides relatively quickly. This is the one of the services is market information. I encourage you to go on our website. We have different types of information available there. There is also a funding instrument database. This is supposed to give you an overview of what is out there in terms of financing instruments, and I confess it's outdated, but outdated in terms of the number, not in terms of the content of the respective instruments, but the number of instruments, because it's a lot more. But improvement is already on the horizon. We have a service provider on board who's going to help us update this within the next quarter. So that's happening. Then secondly, another highlight that I want to point out to you is the events that we are supporting. Our vision is that we support associations, partners in organizing these events. We have done that a great many times already in many countries. It's events in Africa, regional events, national events, or events in Europe. They attract different crowds, obviously. And what we normally do is that we plug in a service provider matchmaking. It's like speed dating for companies or for other stakeholders. I participate myself whenever I can in these events, and I encourage you all to do so. Voila. And for example, there's in Mozambique, there's a big conference coming up in about a month from now. We're going to work together here on the SolarPower Summit, SolarPower Euro Summit in Brussels. And then another big event that is coming up is the SE for All Forum in Kigali. That's going to attract a lot of people. Voila. this is for us very important, because through these events we can not only get a reality check on what is happening in the market, but also and stay in touch with our partners, the target groups, the financiers, the companies, etc. pp. But we can also inform and mobilize for who we are and what we do, basically, and bring people also together for networking purposes. And I suppose that we all agree that this is helpful and important. In any case, the third element is what I want to spend a bit more time on. This is an offering that we have that can add specific value to you. We have a standby team of advisors that can help you if you present yourself, your project, your company, your business to us, and there's a certain procedure that we try to keep as lean as possible, but nonetheless, a procedure is necessary that can help you get access to and be linked with financiers. That's what this does. And to give you an idea of the order of magnitude that we're talking about here, is not that we have started this last week. This has been operational now for 3 years. We've had more than 500 applications. We've supported more than 100 transactions, projects or companies. And with more than 25 of them, we've successfully linked them with financing. Have a look at our website, it's all explained there. I go a bit more into the details now, but here you see the link is also relatively easy to find online. You can also see which advisors we have, and for some of you there might be some known faces here. Voila, how does it work in essence? To briefly outline this to you. So the advisors are on standby. This is a service that is we're very happy that it's free of charge, essentially, courtesy to the contributors and donors of GET.invest. Now, there's various different ways how this could be structured. We have opted to structure it into 4 services that are both building on each other and as well at the same time an a la carte menu. So you can either have the full 4-course dinner, or you can just have a dessert if that's what you need. It really depends on what your needs are. One service is an advice on the broader investment strategy. How do I go about this in the first place? What are the steps that I need to take? What is the strategy that I should follow? The second one is very specific, and we actually spend most time and resources on this. This is in greatest demand. This is the question of how is my business case structured? How is it presented? And how is the corresponding financial model structured and presented? Because in the end of the day, if you as a company or as a project go to a financier, that's what they look at, in particular financial model. So we spend a lot of time, and we have very senior experts that have a lot of experience on this in our team. Thirdly, what financing instruments are out there? What are their models, their modalities, and who do I talk to, and how do I talk to them? How do I get the door to open in the first place? That's what we can help with. And lastly, once the negotiation is on track, once the contact has been established, we can also, in a limited way, help with transaction support. But I should emphasize that along these lines, we cannot do all the work. Obviously, this is a team of advisors. It's also not what we're supposed to do. We can help get things on track, and we can also help companies get the means to engage qualified service providers. Developing a project or a business is a cumbersome affair. It takes a lot of time. It's very expensive, depending, of course, on the size and the complexity of the model. So it is not like this is a silver bullet that will fix all the problems. Yeah? There is a room and a need for highly specialized advisors, and our job, our role is to crowd and to leverage those in. Bon, I don't want to go into too much into details about how this works, but in essence, we have an application procedure process. There's a way the projects obviously are screened and received. But if you have questions, I can go into this in greater detail. What we try to do in a nutshell is keep the bureaucracy away from you. Yeah, the process is meant to be as simple as possible and get you the help and support that you need in the most efficient way and effective way. Also, we hope. And by the way, if you have feedback about this, if you think it could be better, we're very keen to have that feedback from you and for you to be in touch with us. One last word or one last slide on which finance we can link with. I think most of you will appreciate and have that experience, of course, that there's different needs of capital and different types of finance that become relevant at different stages. At an early stage, seed capital, development grants, or patient equity. In startup development, it's for sure equity, then potentially larger grant support. It depends, maybe even already debt. And then, of course, once the project goes from the development into web, once financial close is achieved, that's when a lot of money is needed, because that's when construction starts, or that's when operations begin. We are able to help with all these types of capital. There is a vast and still growing field of financing options out there. We have a broad network. We have a very close working relationship, of course, with a couple of key instruments, such as Electrify, what Silvia mentioned, the flagship instrument of the EU. There's also others. It's in any case, it's a diverse world. In most cases, we find that in a specific or any given project or company, there's many financiers involved, and that is also good that way. What we believe we can assure you, what we're confident that we can assure you, that our advisors can help find the right type and amount of financing at the right time. That's what this is about. Voila. And to conclude, we are open to support any company willing to engage in decentralized renewable energy projects in Africa, in the partner countries, I should say, not just Africa. There is a couple of minimum criteria that you can find them on our website, but they're pretty straightforward. They're essentially meant to filter minimum viability and guide what we're actually looking for. I am very positive. I mean, I'm here with the solar audience, the solar PV, I guess mostly audience, and this certainly represents still the fastest growing cluster of technologies across all the market segments. Yeah, by that I mean that solar is the dominant technology in all the aforementioned market segments, and in the off-grid space, it's almost exclusively solar, in conjunction, of course, with batteries or with diesel. It depends, but solar is the renewable energy source that is, and for the foreseeable future. Now, as I mentioned, you can benefit from our support through the market information on our website, through participating in events that we're supporting, for example, with partners such as SolarPower Europe, and you can make use of the advisory facility that we have, the Finance Catalyst. And if you have any questions or suggestions, do feel free to be in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael. And indeed, also on SolarPower Europe side, it's been a pleasure working with you. Also previously in the context of our ACP, I think you've been doing a great work, and we're also very proud of the work that we've been doing with you, all the information events and supporting associations, because I think that's something you didn't specifically mention, but one of the key elements of the collaboration between SolarPower Europe and GET.invest is to support local associations.
Yeah, that's true. I overlooked that. You're right.
And yes. Indeed, I just wanted to really highlight this, because this is something that is a priority for SolarPower Europe as well, and it's really good to have an actor, an entity like GET.invest that makes it possible for us to do this. So we've been working lately with the Mozambican Association, AMER, and this collaboration is being supported by GET.invest. And this type of collaboration, these types of projects can really enable industry associations in countries where these types of associations really do need support, because the market is not mature enough. And we as SolarPower Europe, we're very happy to share our experience on, well, simply on how to run an association, because that's one of the things that we have expertise in. So thanks a lot, Michael, again. And before moving on to Damien, I would just like to highlight that at the end of the three presentations, the participants will have the possibility to ask questions. You will just have to post your questions in written form in the application that you can see on your right-hand side. So I would now like to invite Damien to give us his overview and his perspective on the financing needs and support needs of the renewable energy investment, especially in the context of GET.invest. Damien, over to you.
Hi everybody, it's a pleasure to be on board as well. So maybe to present myself, I'm the CEO of Finergreen, and Finergreen is a financial advisor dedicated to renewables. So we only work on the financial support of renewable energy, and we are based in Europe and emerging countries. We have offices in Latin America, Africa, Middle East, and Southeast Asia. So clearly our job is to support developers to find funds for the development and for the construction of renewable energy projects. In that sense, we saw, I would say, there is, I would say, a lot of difficulties to raise funds in the area Africa, Pacific, and Caribbean. Why? Because in this area you have, I would say, two things that happens. You work on small projects mostly because you are on island or you are in areas where there is not so much grid enough. And second thing, you know, on island, this is small region. You don't have so much banks or investors who want to come because this is too small for this region, or for Africa, too risky because of the kind of instability in terms of geopolitics. So meaning that globally we have a context in this region of more difficulties to get finance. So in that sense, the idea is, if we saw that, what are the solutions to unlock this kind of financing? So, and if we take every step of the financing of a project, you have solution. So first, you have the development of the project, and clearly, as Frank said, you have a lot of local developers with good relationship on the ground, good business relationship, but they are not able to make a project bankable. And we need to have a project bankable, because if the project is not bankable, you will not get any financing. So for that, you have, I would say, several kind of possibilities. You can work typically with GET.invest, because you can have access to this kind of assistance of advisory. And also you need as well also cash with some funds for the development, because when at a certain point of stage you need to make external studies or to work with lawyers, and this is could be a lot of money to put on the table. So it's good to have, I would say, public entities like Electrify, like Infraco, who are there to impulse and to help support this kind of project. So then, when you got your, I would say, and this is the most, as of today, this is clearly the most difficult part, because you have, I would say that the private investors don't want to take so much risk in terms of developments in this area. Then you pass to the other phase of the project. This is the financing of the construction. And when you arrive to this phase, what's happened? So you want to discuss with banks to finance the project. You are happy because you have already your project ready to build, but you don't have access to the long-term financing. And maybe you have the authorities of the country who are saying, oh, I want my project green connected in 6 months from now. They say, okay, but I don't have the financing, and it could be very long to get bank approval. It could take 12 months and maybe more. So in that case, there is also kind of solution which names bridge financing, then can help you to bridge the gap between the end of development to the end of construction. So they can give you money to finance the construction before taking and before having the long-term financing. So you have also there is kind of private banks, commercial banks who are doing that, but not so much at the moment. This is mostly investment fund, debt fund who are doing this kind of tools, and this is something that we see, I would say, every day and everywhere in Europe, and this is just the start, the beginning in Africa and other emerging regions. And lastly, so you need to set up the long-term financing, and you have two possibilities finally for the debt. So either you work with development banks, and in that sense, so it's very good because development banks can give you access to cheap money, but you need to be aware that working with them, it could takes a long time because they will make a lot of due diligence on the project. So you could wait 1 year before getting your financing approval. And the other solution is to work with local banks. So what is good with local banks is that you can have credit approval, I would say, very quickly, but the financial conditions of these banks will not be very efficient because they are not able to give you cheap money, so the interest rate will be higher, and also you will not have a good tenor, so the maturity of the loan you will set up will be short, and maybe you will not be able to grab 80%, 70 or 80% of the project with debt financing, but maybe only 50, 60% of the project. So this is for the debt financing. And lastly, for the equity financing, I would say as of today, this is something the easiest on emerging countries, because once you reach the project status ready to build, once you get your debt financing credit approval, then you have, as of today, a lot of investment fund, private investment fund, or also IPP players who are willing to invest in some projects. I would say the only difficulty at this stage, this is more the size of the project. So it's better to work on a portfolio of projects instead of working just on a small asset. Just to give you an example, it's better to have 10 projects of 1 megawatt as a portfolio, and you will reach and find financing easily, instead of working on a single 1 megawatt project. And to give you an example on that, and to be very clear, in Tunisia, for example, we are currently financing some projects of 10 megawatts, and maybe some of you know that in the past months there is also a project of 1 megawatt coming out, and you had a good role of Electrify who helped this project at the beginning. But this is true that it's more difficult to find equity and debt long-term financing because the projects are relatively small. So it's better to work in portfolio, and this is currently what we are doing. We will take, for example, a 10 mega plus 1 mega. So with 11 megawatt as a portfolio, we will manage to get this financing. So just to sum up on that, I would say, apart from, the support very helpful of public entities like GET.invest, Electrify, Infraco, and so on, you could also use private support like Finergreen to support you in your fundraising at every step on the status of your project. Yeah, so I'm I'm available. I hope it was clear, and I'm available also for every question you may have.
Thank you, Damien, for your perspective, and so with this, I think we can open the Q&A session. So I would like to encourage the attendees to post questions and ask everything that should be asked. We already have a couple of questions. I would start with the first one. The question is aimed at Michael, and it is, who is your customer? So what types of companies do you deal with? Who are the people or the companies that approach you for support?
Good. Our customer, we are supporting and advising companies or project developers. Those are the ones that need to click the button, submit project, that is on our website. So that means not financiers, not agents, not advisors, but whoever owns the project needs to come to us. Aspect number one. Now, who are they? The statistics are actually interesting. Yeah, we have a pretty much even spread geographically in sub-Saharan Africa between East, Central, West, and Southern, which did surprise me a little bit because, frankly, I had expected a small overhang from Eastern Africa, but it's not very noticeable. It's there a little bit, but not very noticeable. Another question is what kind of market segments are they coming from? For now, we have a good share of the projects that are on-grid, say about 40%. The remaining 60% in equal parts, mini-grids, commercial and industrial, as well as solar home systems companies. We have recently opened for clean cooking. That's about, I think, 6 in the portfolio right now. And another dimension that you might be interested in is it domestic companies or is it international companies? It's both. It's, you know, we're still a development program. My heart beats a little bit for the small local guys, I should say. So we have a few of those in the portfolio as well. And I also find that the distinction is mostly not that easy because we have joint ventures in all colors and shapes, which is also why we didn't say this is only for local or African companies. It doesn't work that way. Yeah, the reality, the market does not look that way. Therefore, we have not posed a restriction in that regard.
Okay, thanks a lot for these clarifications. So a second question is loosely related to this, and it is about the requirements to get involved. So you know, minimum project size, or maybe in your case to some extent maximum project size, the sector CNI, and also this refers to something that Damien was highlighting. Is it possible to bundle a number of smaller projects together and come to you with that package of projects?
I think Damien also might have good input on the bundling question. On our side, yes, it is, as long as it's a coherent business case, as long as it's something that our advisors can work with. Can I take it together with this question that I see right here, how long it takes to apply and get the answer? We work in batches. So the criteria are actually on the website. On the website, those are the broader eligibility criteria. And right now it says 1 to 70 million. But if you have a good, we're updating the website as we speak. Yeah, the service provider is basically working on it. So we're already looking at, say, from $250,000 upwards. I do not want to touch the upper ceiling, and in fact, I would like to push that a bit lower because I'm not sure whether we have as GET.invest really added value in the space of these very big programs. I think most of them, projects or businesses, most of them should be able to stand on their own feet and indeed go to the commercial market for support. How long does it take? I think, so we operate in batches, meaning it's kind of an open-ish recurrent call. I didn't want to have calls every half year. That creates just a big pile, and then a lot of people get in. It's too inflexible. Still, we need something to work with. So every 6 weeks, we open and close batches, assess them. So if you get very, 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 very unlucky, it's an 8 weeks delay until you have support, because it takes about 2 weeks to process it. Yeah. But normally it's less than that. I think today, so if you apply tomorrow, it will take 5 weeks or 6, because we just closed the batch. But then that's how it works. Yeah.
And so thank you very much, Michael. The next question concerns basically how successful you've been so far. So how much money have you drawn so far, basically, in all the projects that you have facilitated that have reached or are in the process of reaching, you know, construction phase or realization?
Yeah, and here I also need to be clear. I think that's also again where Damien comes in, because I do think that there is a way how our support is upstream from the kind of work that players like Finergreen do. So one thing I realized when we set up this facility is that no financier wants to buy the cat in the bag, which is why we do not promise, and of course we want to achieve financial close, that's clear. But if we come and say from the onset, we support until financial close, then a couple of financiers will be like, okay, thank you very much. But that's actually our work. We decide who is at financial close and who is not. In other words, we have our goal post is that a project or a transaction has been accepted by a financier, and in very many cases we still continue the advisory support after that towards financial close. We have, I think off the top of my head, it's right now, I think we stand at 30 projects that we have brought to the point where a financier has said, okay, I'm good, I can work with this. And that accumulated investment volume is in excess of 300 million euros. Yeah, and then we're right now working on a list of projects that we're also going to publish in terms of data and success stories. I think we have about 10 or 11 cases that are in operation, where either electricity is being produced and fed into the grid, or whether a company based on the financing that we have mobilized is now, you know, using that money to expand its operations.
Thanks a lot, Michael. Damien, do you have any reflections until this stage on what has been said so far on bundling, you know, the length of the application process, etc.?
Yeah, I have just only one question, maybe one more question in comment from Michael. When you say the proposal need to be accepted by a financier, what do you mean? Do you mean you have it's like kind of letter of intent received by the project developers? What does it mean exactly?
Good, on the spot, because it means exactly that. Letter of intent is the minimum threshold after which we say that our support has made a difference. You see, there's like different degrees of solidity of financial commitment, obviously. A letter of intent is not the hardest commitment, but also not the softest anymore. At that point, you do have some serious interest, there's reputation involved, and if the development process proceeds properly, a very high likelihood that this thing, unless something goes wrong on the underlying fundamentals or on the business model, that this thing would actually fly. The ultimate solidity obviously is financial close. Yeah, but indeed our threshold is letter of intent or equivalent.
Okay.
Thanks, Damien and Michael. So the next question that I would like to propose to discuss is a bit provocative, but I think it is important to take these questions as well. So it says there are many project preparation facilities working in a similar field to GET.invest, such as ARENAS and the ADFD's project preparation facility, the PFAN, GCIP. I'm not even familiar with all of them. So what differentiates GET.invest from these other facilities, and what do you do to avoid duplication?
Good question, but we're working with all of them, and I know them all very well. So PFAN are our close friends. We have a cooperation agreement with PFAN. PFAN does very different things from us. PFAN, the key added value of PFAN is, and by the way, I encourage you all to seek support of PFAN. They help write business plans. We don't do that. Yeah, people have to come to us with a business plan. And so PPAN has a very different DNA from us. So does the IRENA colleagues. The IRENA colleagues, very esteemed colleagues. We work very well with them on joint events. They do not have a standby team of advisors available that reacts on short notice and basically acts in a very flexible way to fix whatever problem it is that you may have on your way to obtaining a letter of intent from a financier. They don't. And most of the other project preparation, there's actually 50 or 60 even, to my knowledge, project preparation facilities. IRENA has a couple of very interesting tools, the Project Navigator, the Finance Navigator, and the Project Navigator, we advise people to make use of the Project Navigator. It's a very different type of support from what we do. The thing is this, it's a bit like cars, I suppose. A car is a car, one might argue, and everybody should be happy with one car. But no, it's not like that. People want really different cars for different purposes and for different needs. One of the features, and we really try to make this different, is that, and I do appreciate a lot of the existing project preparation facilities for the good work that they do, but in most cases, they are tied to a very specific financing instrument. For example, I have very good working experience with what is now SUNREF, and before it was Regional Technical Assistance Program in Kenya. That was leading projects towards a specific credit line of a specific bank, which is good in some cases, if you know what I want, or if you're operating in a specific context. But what we can offer is, like, if you want an insurance, and if you go to, say, Allianz, with all respect to Allianz, and ask them what insurance you should buy, what do you think they're going to tell you? They're probably going to tell you that you should buy an Allianz product. But there's many different options out there. So what we try to do with this is have a very flexible animal that can serve the different needs of the different developers at the different stages, the different market segments, in the different countries, with accessing a different financing options from the different actors that provide the different types of financing. I hope that makes sense. One thing I realized in working in this line of doing work in this line of business, that it's quite complicated out there, and there's lots of shades of gray and colors and flavors to what we do.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael, for this clarification. And so the next question concerns the geographical scope of GET.invest. Yeah. Specifically, the question is, when will GET.invest services be available in the Pacific region, and whether they are already available in the Pacific region. But I would like to propose to broaden the question a little bit and ask you, when will GET.invest be available globally?
We'll see. I honestly don't know. Look, I have a lot of respect before also promising too much and over promising. It's very important to have also these webinars to clarify the exact scope of what you do and also show limitations to what you do, because we're not a silver bullet, the one-fits-all solution. There is a need for specialized service providers. There is a need for additional support, grant facilities or whatnot to finance, say, for example, feasibility studies. One could, of course, argue, why is this all not coming from the same source, from the same hand? I have asked myself that question many times. I don't necessarily have a very satisfactory answer to it, except that it's just not how it works or how things grow and evolve naturally. What GET.invest does, we act on behalf of our donors in terms of the mandate that we have been entrusted with. So in theory, right now, we have the mandate to operate in all ACP countries. In practice, we have a team that is, I hope, good at doing work in the sub-Saharan African context, which is already quite diverse. It's not a country, it's a big continent with many countries and different market segments in different countries moving at different paces. So we have now carefully started our first avenues into the Caribbean region, and that is not easy. And I have a lot of respect before going into a region that is even geographically so difficult and also market-wise so difficult as the Pacific. So one step at a time. I cannot tell you for sure that we will be operating there, and but I'm hopeful that we would be. We would need to adapt our modalities, and there's no way we can do this before half a year from now.
All clear. Thank you very much. So unless there are any additional immediate questions, and I think we've already taken most of them, all of them, then I would I would just ask you, Michael, again, if you have any final remarks to the audience, apart from obviously inviting them to go to your website and go to the events that you're organizing and supporting, that we're organizing together.
Yeah, maybe to conclude, I'm also just returning from an interesting event in Nairobi, the Off-Grid Solar Conference. My gut feeling is that things are moving really very quickly. There's a lot of dynamics in the market. I can only encourage you to go to these events. Now we have the one here in Brussels coming up as the next one, our collaboration, I believe, to stay in tune with what is happening, because things are really quite diverse. And it's the complexity, and it's like with other aspects of life, I suppose, these days, complexity is not reducing, complexity is increasing. And there's more specialization coming online. Again, I hope this is useful. I hope our support to the sector is useful. I sincerely do. If you find, and I know that there are some things that could certainly be done differently, but there's also, in most cases, reasons why we're doing it the way we're doing it. We're now also doing fine-tuning on the job, but we are willing to fine-tune further. So please do not hesitate to give us feedback on, in general, what we do, but also specifically if you have been in a client, and if it's going well, that's great, let us know. But if it's not going well, please also let us know. Then you have come to the right place, because we can change it and make it work better. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And so I'd just like to show you this last slide on the SolarPower Summit, which SolarPower Europe is organizing with the support of GET.invest on the 25th of March here in Brussels, and which will comprise a dedicated session on the EU's new Green Deal diplomacy, and specifically how the Green Deal will have an effect on the EU's external cooperation in the field of renewable energy. So we will have high-level speakers from the European Commission, from industry, from various EU instruments such as Electrify, and we will discuss the topic of Green Deal diplomacy, which is a really new and fascinating topic. So please visit our website, solarpowersummit.org, and register if you're interested. So with this, I would like to thank our speakers, Silvia, Ainio, Michael, Franz, and Damien Ricordeau for their presentations and input to today's webinar. And I would like to thank all the attendees and participants also on behalf of SolarPower Europe for being here with us. And I would like to wish you a nice rest of the day. Thank you for attending this webinar, and you will receive shortly an email with the recording and presentations.